On. And we're back again. Once again, we are here with the Painfully Honest Tech Podcast, the podcast so honest it hurts. And today we are going to talk about all things Pixel 8-ish. And there's several different little pieces of the puzzle that we want to discuss about the Pixel 8 and 8 Pro. We're also going to talk about maybe there's a new Apple Pencil.
Yes,
but there are no new iPads.
$79 Apple Pencil. The budget.
Yes. So if you're excited about those things plus anything else that we just like randomly start talking about, then stick around. We're here.
You're in the right place.
Yeah, if you want to come back again, you can always hit the subscribe button. You can always hit the like button. I'm gonna get the audio thing going soon. It's been a busy couple of weeks, so I need to do that. But there will be audio podcast one of these days very soon. So keep a lookout for that. I will let you know. We will let you know whenever that happens. But yeah, we're just going to get started. My old friend Adam here, the Tech Odyssey.
Howdy.
And yeah, so Pixel 8 and Pixel 8 Pro came out last week. Seems like so much longer ago than last week.
This last week, man, God, it's like a year inside of a week. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's gone by so fast.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So you got one from Google, so you had at least like a day or so early, right?
I did. Yes, I got my shill phone. So since Google sent it to me, of course, I'm biased, so I can tell you all about the great things about the phone.
And he got the sexy blue. The sexy blue was not available to purchase anywhere in my area.
The bay blue color. I tell you, I love this color. I don't normally like contrasty colored phones. Normally I'm like, give me the white one. give me the charcoal one. But this one, I think, is the best looking of the four. And yeah, it shows up okay on the camera, but I like it. And I really like this soft touch texture on the back. It feels like you're just running your hands across marble. I don't know what they did with this, but it doesn't feel frosted, but it's just so smooth.
Yeah. I noticed that too, because I was able to, at first, when I was going to order one from Best Buy, the night before I went on Best Buy's website and it said I couldn't get one until the 17th, which is today.
Mm-hmm. That's what mine told me.
And then I went back the next morning and I could order one. So I ordered one as well. And I got the black because A, I think that's all they had. And B, that's what I would usually get anyway. And so I too was impressed with the texture on the back. The one thing I wasn't super psyched about was the fact that I guess the Pixel 8 has like a matte camera visor, and the Pixel 8 Pro has like a shiny one.
A
chromed out one.
I didn't pay that much attention to it. Now, honestly, I have it inside. I should have brought it out here because you had the 8 Pro. I have the 8 Pro. Yep. So I was just anticipating talking about the 8 Pro, not necessarily the 8. So I do have the 8, and I was in the same boat as you. I pre-ordered it, and it was telling me the 17th. Yeah. And then, as you know, it launched on the 12th. And then that's the day that it was available in the store. And then it's like, oh, we've got the phone that you pre-ordered that you can get right now at the store. So I canceled my pre-order, and I went down there and I picked it up.
Right. Yeah, and I guess so. I ordered mine on the 12th, and then I could have picked up the Pixel Watch 2, but in between ordering the phone and Saturday when I could have picked up the watch, I returned my Pixel 8 Pro.
No.
Yes, I did. And I mean, maybe we should talk a little bit about the phone before we get into that, because
I was surprised. I saw your tweet like 2 days after you bought it that said, I took it back. I was like, wow, that's probably the fastest.
Yeah.
I've seen somebody take a phone back. So I was like, wow, I must have been really not impressed with that phone.
Yeah. And it's weird because on some levels I was impressed. On other levels, I didn't have time to really use all the AI magical features. Google's trying to take over the magical space.
They are. It's like the Magic Kingdom in a phone. If only that wasn't already used by Disney.
Johnny Ive has been gone from Apple for long enough that everybody forgets that Apple was the original magical tech company.
I don't even use a lot of those features. We've had Magic Eraser for what, 2 years now? I'm like, "Ooh, Magic Eraser." I know some people love that stuff. We got the new Magic Editor, Magic Eraser. The stuff that matters more to me is they have a new feature on there where you can summarize web pages, and
Yeah.
it puts it into, like, 3 little bullet points for you, and it's so nice because there's so much gibberish in a lot of these articles nowadays. It's just filler. I'm like, if I just wanna get the meat and potatoes real quick, I've really been enjoying that feature. I will tell you that.
Yeah. The thing about so not to go on too far of a tangent, but I've noticed that in a lot of websites that, I'll go to Google curates a little news page and I'll look at that every morning. And it gives me football and tech and, stuff like that. One thing I've noticed this year is that a lot of these websites are obviously using AI
Very
to
obvious.
generate a lot of their content because it's all filler.
Yeah, it's all filler and there's ads
Yeah,
everywhere.
yeah, and so this was my worst fear about AI, that people would just start using it to generate more content without really using it as a support structure to help you build out more content, but instead just like
Being lazy.
yeah, and not really putting, just like low effort content out there. And so it's really bummed me out because this is my greatest fear about AI. I mean, I use AI stuff for my production process. I don't use it for I don't use it for like ideas. I use it for, helping me edit stuff and all that kind of thing. But
I
yeah, it's very annoying. And when it so I've watched several videos on the Pixel 8 Pro over the past week, and the one that I watched most recently was Mr. Who's the Boss and his full review, which was like 25 minutes or something.
That's
And
long.
yeah, I know. And I typically don't watch him because obviously he's like trying to be the Mr. Beast of tech, and it's kind of annoying. But
If you just listen to the audio, it's better. I can't stand watching his videos because every couple of seconds there's like this shocking, jarring transition. There's
yeah,
like
and he's bouncing around in his chair,
I'm
and
like, this is a
yeah,
bit much. I'm not 14.
yeah.
Like going to be 40 in 3 months.
But I mean, that's how he's pitching his videos, and obviously it's working for him. I mean,
Hey,
he has 16 million subscribers, can't be wrong, right?
like you add both of ours together and we can't get to 400,000. So clearly he
Yeah,
knows what he's doing.
yeah, and well, he's also got a staff. Hey, here's a little tidbit. I still get like from Indeed and some of these other uh job sites, like LinkedIn sends me all these little digests of jobs that I could apply for.
Mhm.
And most of them are writing jobs because if I was to take another job, which isn't really in the offing, I would want it to be a writing job instead of like an office job. And most of those are remote now. But I yeah, I don't want to work for anybody ever again. But
I agree.
I uh I did get one and I looked it over, and one of them was for writing for Mr. Who's the Boss. And it
I
was
don't
something like his newsletter or something like that. And so I was just like, well, screw it. I'll send him my CV. And yeah, I didn't get a call.
No.
No, I didn't. But I mean, I've made videos about him in the past, and yeah, I don't know that I don't know that he even remembers who I am, but if he does, he might not like me. So, you
So what
know,
did he have to say? What did he have to say in 25 minutes about the Pixel 8 Pro?
well, he kind of summed it up and went into pretty good detail about some of the same things that were bothering me. Like on its face, all the specs are right about the Pixel 8 Pro, and all the extra doodads
Mhm.
are right, and all of it sounds really cool. But you know, when I do my reviews, I look at the just the aesthetics of it, and then the screen, the battery, the camera. I kind of have a list of things that I go through,
Yep.
and all of the things that are like on the surface. So the aesthetics and the screen and that stuff, all were great. And then as I started to fool around with it a little bit more, I kind of found that the extra stuff was kind of getting in the way sometimes. And the way that and so I just basically decided, for one thing, I'm still like really enjoying my iPhone 15 Pro Max. And sometimes when a new phone comes out, I'm sort of in that mood of like, well, it'll be a nice change of pace to switch to another phone.
Mhm.
But I just didn't want to do it because this iPhone has just really worked incredibly well for me, and I was just like, it's only like a couple of weeks old.
It is frustrating. And, I talk about this sometimes where you and I and other people as tech reviewers, you get a phone and you like really start to enjoy it, and then another one comes along, and you're like, oh, well, now I got to shift over to this one,
Yeah,
and I like that's very extreme fringe first world problems, I admit,
yeah, yeah,
but at the same time, it really it kind of sucks sometimes. But I, when you mentioned me at the beginning, of course, Tech Odyssey, also the foremost authority on Pixel phones, the other part of my title. So I'm very much into the Pixel world. So this
right,
is right in my wheelhouse. I enjoy the phone. The biggest things I was looking for, because the Pixel 7, the Pixel 6, they had issues. Like Android
yeah,
12 was a big problem for it. And then there was like network problems and the cell signals shutting off and people's phones overheating all the time. Like we've just been working the kinks out of these phones for the last 2 years. So Android 14, I was in the beta, felt pretty smooth, even though I used it kind of limited. I'm not a big beta fan. But once the official version came out, it felt good. It felt solid.
right,
And so the biggest things for me with this phone were, is the modem any better? Is the standby time improved? And how's the battery life and the heat? Because those were like the biggest issues we've had for the last 2 years. And
right,
it seems like there's been marked improvement in all four of those areas.
right,
So I'm very happy about that. Now, there are more added AI stuff. And it's funny because uh, Samsung has like the hexa-core processor that they use for using, like, is what they call it for their AI stuff.
right.
Apple has the neural engine. So Google doesn't have a lock on the AI market, but they're really the ones that try and push it out in your face. They're like, look, we are the AI kings.
Yeah,
And there's stuff that comes along with it, like the Magic Eraser, Magic Editor, the summarization of web pages, voice to text, and
yeah,
voicemail to text translation on the phone. They do these cool things, but I feel like you have to go out of your way to use them.
yeah. I think that's a good way of putting it. Like, they're not, and maybe they will be. I mean, because it's so hard to judge a phone in the first week, um, when honestly, with everything that phones do today, and with all the software changes that they're making, and that stuff like that, every phone is going to have some kind of kink that needs to get worked out, right?
Mhm,
And so I felt like with the Pixel 8 Pro, because the last Pixel that I used was the 7a,
mhm.
and I felt like that was a really mature experience, but that's because the 7a comes out after, however long after the 7,
Yeah, like 8 months
and
later.
and so everything that got fixed with the 7 comes into the 7a. Uh, when it comes to especially the picture, like the photo stuff,
Mhm.
um, there Magic Eraser, I was like, "Oh, that's cool." Like one little thing, like somebody in the background or some kind of weird thing, you know, messes up your picture, and so you can get rid of it. I like that. But one thing that, as it goes further with, like, being able to pick things up and
Move
move
the
the
car in the tree. Like,
yeah,
I feel
it's not it's like, that's no longer the picture that you took.
yeah, I mean, that's I got tired. It's funny because I was looking at Max Weinbach shaking his fist at everybody this last week because I guess Marquez Brownlee said, "What is a picture or what is a photo?" After all the illustrations of people moving stuff around, and it's so far removed from what the original photo was, but it's a photo. And the thing with me is a lot of these features, maybe some of my audience gets mad with me. I don't know. I just don't care. Like, I don't care about if I were 17, 18, 22, and I'm out taking photos with with friends that I don't have, that maybe I used to have in college or something. Like, I
Right.
feel like for me, I pretty much never use any of that stuff. Like, it just doesn't matter to me, but it's cool. I mean, it's cool that you can do it, but I just don't do that.
Another thing that's weird about it is that in order to use it, your photo and everything has to be already uploaded to Google servers,
Mhm.
and most of that processing happens on the servers, which I guess isn't such a bad thing, but the way that Google presented it was that it seemed like it was happening on the phone,
I
right?
thought I know that the video stuff, because Video Boost is coming out soon.
Yeah,
Video Boost is done off the phone on a Google server. I thought the
right.
photo stuff was done on the phone, though. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, what I've seen in several reviews, and again, I've used Magic Eraser and stuff like that, but I didn't try these particular features, was that, um, well, Mr. Who's the Boss, I think, put it best. He was like, "Well, every time I tried to do even what Google showed in their presentation where they had the old lady, like, trying to hold the waterfall or whatever,
Mhm.
and, like, they move her around and they take out the people and all that kinda stuff." He showed that until it, like, got up to the server, until the photo got up to the server and came back to the phone, you couldn't do it. Now is are these, like, growing pains that aren't just working? And I mean, you have to also put into play the fact that Mr. Who's the Boss is in England, and the feature set is slightly different. They don't get some of the same features that the US and I think Canada get. So, or at least they don't get them yet. Uh, the one thing that bothered me even more than moving pieces of the picture around was I forget what they call it now, but it was like the best shot feature before,
Yeah.
but now you can, like, do best shot and then, like, swap heads in.
Yeah,
And
you can, like you can swap heads, you can look at it, like, I guess you can try and find the best. Look, I mean, that stuff's cool, and that's what I was talking about, like, I'm never going to do that. I mean, that's what I talk about when I say a lot of these features, they're not patent, they're latent. Like, you have to go into the phone and find them. Like, I feel like 90 not 90%, but let's say 70% of people that pick up a Pixel will probably never use 75% of these features.
but yeah, and to me, while these features are cool,
Mhm.
they seem to me to be somewhat useless, honestly, in the sense that, like you say, many people aren't gonna use them. Maybe they won't even realize that they're there, or they won't understand what they are. But also, once you start manipulating a photo to, like, the degree that you can now with these features, it just it seems like it goes against what photographs are,
A
it's not.
photograph is supposed to be like a capture of a memory or a moment in time
Yeah,
that has of importance to you that you can look back on later and go like, "Oh, that was cool." Like, me and
yeah,
Jason were hanging out on the beach drinking Mai Tais. It's something that's like I said, it's a moment in time to capture,
yeah.
not something to rearrange like Legos to make an ideal something.
And also part of the challenge and joy of taking photos is being able to capture that moment when, it's one frame frozen in time that represents a whole experience, right? And if you capture a photo that gets you that kind of satisfaction, it just seems weird to me to, like, then be like, "Oh, well, so and so wasn't smiling the way I want them to. Let me go find a head
Let's go
with
find
a."
their ideal smile.
Yeah, just I don't know. It seems
Well,
again,
remember we were
maybe this is our AI episode, but again, it's like AI can be used for good or
Yeah,
or
and like if we go back even further, remember when they I think it was the iPhone and Samsung when they first put in like you could take the red eye feature from the flash out of
right,
photos like a long time ago, and that was cool because remember when we used to have traditional cameras or back when we used to use flashes on phones,
right,
we didn't need night photos. You would get that red eye from the reflection in your eye, so then you would be able to scrub that out. And now it's just automatically done,
yeah,
but now it's like okay, I'm cool with blurriness. I like the idea where you can go into your Google Photos library from a photo taken on like a Pixel previously, and it'll unblur something. Because I had some photos taken years ago. I'm like, oh, this is
yeah,
cool. Let me clean it up. That is meaningful. That is not an alteration of the photo. That's an enhancement that has value.
right.
But when you're like swapping faces and heads and like, oh, I
Sure.
don't like that tree back there. Okay.
In their promo material, they show like a site a camping shot, right? And it's like 2 or 3 people over on the right side, and then the tent is like toward the background on the left side. And so they just grab the tent and pull it over to be beside the people. And I'm like, but the reason the tent's not there is because the ground beneath it wasn't suitable for the tent to be there. So it's like, yeah, it just seems like I don't know.
How weird would that be though? So like let's so you went on a camping trip with some folks and then they're sending out all the pictures and then it looks right, but in the back of your brain you're like, I don't remember us being that close to the campsite when we took that photo.
Right. Well, and now this opens up a potentially really serious ethical consideration, right?
Mhm.
Because how many thrillers have been based on, oh well, that's a doctored photo. That didn't really happen that way. And now Google has like released a phone where you can do that stuff.
You can fabricate evidence. Like I was saying, I'm going to court on
Yeah.
Thursday. Not for me. I'm not being sued. I'm representing somebody. But um, if somebody were to introduce something like that, I mean, Google has to have something in there that's like, oh, this photo has been altered. Like you
Yeah.
have what did the original photo look like? I could just as easily create a photo with somebody standing behind me with a knife in their hand, like, oh no, attempted murder. He tried to kill me. I've got it on photo evidence.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just like you were at a party and it was Halloween and somebody like was dressed up as Jason Voorhees or whatever, and they're over on this side, and then you want to prove that they tried to kill you at the party. Yeah, I mean, it's
It's
there's
the
a
old web
there's
that
a
we weave.
yeah there's like an uncanny valley that we cross, where it's kind of like this is good, this is venturing into potentially not as good
Like I've
because
got,
to me
I
it's like you want to have a realistic experience, and how do you like at what point do you break that barrier of a realistic experience?
well, I'm going to create a realistic experience because my wife, she forgets everything that I tell her. And I'm going to buy the PlayStation 5 Slim when it comes out. So I'm going to take a
Uh-huh.
picture of me holding it at Best Buy. I'm going to use the phone to Photoshop there with me. I'm like, you were there when I bought it, honey. She'll be none the wiser.
And she'll be like, "Why are you taking a picture of me at Best Buy?"
Like this happened. I was so happy you were there. We got
So, yeah, a little sidetrack. I saw that the PlayStation Slim was announced. I didn't dig in and read if any specs had changed or anything like that. So, is it just like a smaller version?
I think it's like just slightly smaller and they have the non-disk drive. They have the disk drive version. And I think they increased the storage on it. I really
Okay.
didn't look at it too much. I was like, this looks almost the same. I don't really care. I mean, my joke was because they were, and somebody corrected me. They're like, it's not called the PlayStation Slim. I'm like, whatever, I don't care. All the news articles are calling it the PlayStation Slim.
Yeah.
And we know it's taken like 3 years to finally be able to get a PlayStation 5.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my joke was they're calling it the PlayStation Slim because there's a slim chance you'll be able to get it before 2028.
Mhm. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, I think I would only be interested if it were significantly smaller and it wasn't white. Like my PlayStation 5 is back behind the monitor behind me,
I have one.
and the white has just I've barely used it compared to how I used the PlayStation 4, and the white just looks trashed. There's all kinds of little scuffs and everything all over it, and that bums me out because like I don't know. I try to keep my stuff
It's
looking
clean.
pretty good. I enjoy looking at things, for their aesthetic value as well. But yeah, the white has just not held up.
I like it just fine, but I got mine on launch day, luckily. Like I was sitting there the day they went on pre-order and it was like, oh, there's gonna be another batch that's released at like 3 in the morning. So I just happened to be on Target at like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, hit the refresh button magically. It was there. Like
Yeah.
just I added it to cart and I was like, this is a surreal experience. And then it said, yeah, you can pick it up Friday, whatever, at Target. I had to drive like an hour away. But either way, so this one, the original PlayStation 5 digital version. So it's 92 millimeters by 390 millimeters by 260.
Right.
The new one is 80 millimeters, so 12 millimeters smaller that way, and then 358 instead of 390, and then 216 instead of 260 millimeters. So basically, I think it's like, huh.
Yeah.
It's like very like not very meaningful. I don't really think that there's that big of a change, but whatever.
The tallness the tallness is the problem, and it doesn't sound like it got much shorter,
Oh,
you
and here's
know?
the thing. So the original one, it had 825 gigabytes. How they came up with
Right.
that stupid number, I don't even know. But now the new one gives you a full terabyte.
Yeah, well, that's very useful. The thing that I appreciate about the PlayStation over the Xbox Series X and S is that you can get pretty much any M.2 NVMe drive, and
Yeah,
there's just a slot right in there, and it's easily accessible. You pop the side off, you unscrew the shield, the little like shield that they have for it, pop it in, it formats when you open it up, and start the machine again, and then you can have like 2 terabytes, 4 terabytes, plus whatever is on the original hard drive. So
it
I've
is
always
easier.
liked that about PlayStations in general, is that you could
I
always
really
swap in a new drive.
that whole 800 and whatever. How much was it again? 825
I feel
gigabytes. I like. How do you even come? Nobody even makes hard drives in that size. Why not just give it the 1 terabyte to begin with?
I have a feeling that it was, and I don't know this, but this is like just me sort of trying to think of why that might have been. I believe, or it's my belief that it was a 1 terabyte drive, but they partitioned it for the operating
Just
system.
And I've thought
So
about that. I mean, that does make sense. And also future software updates and things like
yeah,
that, because they've got to download files, and then that way you're not having to delete your own storage to make sure maybe you got to get like a, 3 gigabyte
right,
file update or something. And
yeah,
I can understand that. I mean, that's not big of a deal, especially the readily availableness of M2 drives and their price nowadays. I think they're much more affordable, but it's crazy because some games now are like 160 gigabytes.
I know, I know.
140, 120, and it's like, God, this is insane.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to complain because the games, benefit from that, being that big and all that kind of thing. I'm sure some games could be more optimized. It wouldn't have to be that big, but like Warzone and Call of Duty are the worst when it
Oh,
comes
they're
to that.
horrible. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I was just downloading that last night, because my son got it on his computer, so he wanted me to play with him. But yeah, it's a crazy world. But one other thing I wanted to talk about with the 8 Pro. So with the 8 Pro, from what I'm gathering, it seems like you're pretty okay with the hardware. It just seems like maybe a lackluster appeal once you got into the phone.
well, so okay. I think that on some level, Google's intention with the Pixel was to make it kind of the iPhone of Android phones, right? Simple, easy to use, clean version of the operating system, all that kind of stuff. But and they've gone a long way to doing that. I mean, they, if anyone else, can optimize Android for their hardware, right?
Well, it makes
But
sense. I mean, they make Android.
yeah, but the thing that's really kind of been a problem for me is that I feel like they've added so much and sort of altered the ease of use so much that it's not as attractive to me. Like when I was holding it after I got it, I was like, "This is cool," but it's going to take me forever to like learn all the stuff and to get everything set up. And honestly, like this is not a it's not a knock against the phone or anything. It's just I didn't feel like doing it. And maybe that is a knock against the phone because it wasn't compelling enough for me to wanna, like, dig into it and really do anything with it.
So, do you think part of that might be influenced by how much you've been enjoying your iPhone though? Because I find myself, and I'm not an iPhone fan, and my audience knows that I'm not a big iPhone fan. But I got to tell you, I have really enjoyed this iPhone 15 Pro Max. Like, it's just, I don't know what it is. Everything
Yeah.
seems to be firing on all cylinders. I'm getting great battery life again. The screen is beautiful.
Yeah.
And I've really enjoyed the cameras. I think the cameras are top notch too. So there's a lot here that I've enjoyed. And the thing with Apple, though, is it really lulls you into this complacency because one, it just generally it just works, and two,
Right.
it does everything you need it to do. So even me getting the Pixel 8 Pro, one thing that's been difficult for me is the stinking eSIM for my primary phone is stuck in my iPhone, and I can't switch that over to my Pixel. So
Right.
I had to put another. So I'm carrying two phones right now, which I do anyway. But as I've been testing it out, but yeah, it makes it harder whenever because you just use the other one all the time, and it's so everything's already set up.
Right. And the thing about this iPhone that's different for me for some reason, and it's not just one thing. Form factor, it's to me, it's like so much easier to hold for some reason. I mean, yeah, the rounded edges are nice. It's not as squared off as it was. This is somehow like a
It feels
cross
different.
between the yeah, it's a cross between like the iPhone 6 design, the kind of the more rounded edges and stuff, and the squared off design that we've had for the past few years. And so you hold it and it feels good and comfortable. And then somehow with the slimmer bezel, or maybe it's just the form factor itself, this Pro Max feels like much smaller and easier to handle than the Pro Maxes of previous years.
It's less
So
unwieldy.
yeah,
It does.
and
The form
and
factor does feel different.
yeah, and for me, again, this is kind of I the iPhone is my typical regular phone, right?
Mhm.
And so when I switch to another phone, I I lose all the benefits that having the iPhone as the centerpiece of my existence
Mhm.
gives me, right? Because banking stuff, just across the board, everything
Well,
everything is tied to everything it needs to be tied to,
phone
and
calls,
and
also who
Android
you're
won't.
if you're texting.
Yeah, I know that you can, and I have before hooked up Google Messages to my browser and texted people that way. But it's in no way as as easy as, like, opening up the iMessage app that's on all of my computers
Yeah, you're
and
all
being
Mac, right?
yeah. Well, I have a PC. Right now, it's sitting down here uh, waiting to be put back together. It's my my stupid expensive cooler that I bought, like, I think it was almost $300, just crapped out. So
Ah, that makes sense.
yeah, I bought a new cooler, but then that meant that I had to buy new fans and, like, so anyway, it's
I
sitting
get it.
there.
I have a 4 gigabyte M2 drive that's been sitting around for 2 months that I just can't bring myself to pop the case open. I still keep deleting stuff off my computer because I'm just too
Yeah,
lazy to rip my video card out to put that much less
yeah,
invasive than what you've got going on.
and so, well, I mean, this is like a good sort of way to contextualize this iPhone thing. Like, I my Windows computer has enough space for, like, 4 more NVMe drives, and then it came with a separate tray that's a PCIe tray that I could put 2 more, like,
Mhm.
RAID arrayed, um, drives in. Like, everything that I would ever need to do with a computer, I could do inside that box, but I still buy a Mac, right? And it's a lot of the reason that I come back to the iPhone every single time after using Android phones that are judged on their own merits, perfectly good phones, right? And
Mhm.
they'll have their good things, their bad things, just like an iPhone will. But they don't integrate into my life the way that the iPhone does. And that's not just about the iPhone, it's also about, like, the Macs, the iPads, the Apple Watches, the Apple TVs, like, all that
If
stuff.
you're
And when when I thought about the Pixel Watch 2, and I did watch a couple of videos where people had gotten their Pixel Watch 2,
Mhm.
um, I was just like, that looks like the Pixel Watch 1, which I didn't like because A, it was too small, and B, didn't like it didn't really I'm spoiled because the smartwatch that I've most often worn for the longest period of time is an Apple Watch. And right now it's like, you telling me I'm gonna trade Apple Watch Ultra for Pixel Watch 2 and it's gonna be a comparable experience.
So I can speak to that, but also with what you're saying, like I get it, and that's one of the things why once somebody gets in the Apple ecosphere, it's hard, like probably it's like ripping you out of a lifestyle. It's not
Mm,
just, oh, I'm picking up a phone and using a different phone. If you've got an Apple Watch, if you've got a Mac, if you've got an iPad, if you've got all of these things, they're all seamless. They're all integrated. Your family probably uses them because, like, my family is 99% Apple products.
right,
I'm I'm the holdout that uses Android, and this harkens back to my BlackBerry days because I refused to give up my BlackBerry, and then they switched
right,
over to Android. So I adopted Apple as part of, like, that was my secondary phone because my
right.
family all used it. So, but yeah, if you have other Apple products and you are happy with that, that's why people very seldom leave it. You have to be somebody who's like, "Look, I'm just sick of Apple. I want to try something else." And that's unless you're just inclined already to use Android. Not many people want to leave the Apple ecosphere. Even if they do want to leave, they still get sucked in because of iMessage, Blue Bubble, Green Bubble. It's all that stuff.
And the thing for me is, and I think I I I get I get accused of being an Apple sheep or whatever, or an Android hater or those kinds of things. I've gone back and forth over the years. My very first smartphone was the Samsung Galaxy Captivate, which was like the S1 basically,
Was it was it
and
captivating?
it was not. I mean, it was actually very much a piece of trash. Like, it would not work unless you rooted the phone and, like, circumvented that TouchWiz OS,
God,
like,
TouchWiz
that
was
they
so
put on
bad.
there.
I'm so glad that died years ago.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, the operating sys Android wasn't fully optimized, and then the skin that Samsung laid over it wasn't optimized, and the hardware wasn't powerful enough to really do what it needed to do in order to combat those things. And so I started out with Android phones, and some of my favorite phones have been Android phones. We talked last week about the V10 and all the way through the V60. I loved all but the V20. Uh, I loved the LG V series,
They were
and
good.
I've had a lot of Android phones that I've liked. I used to love the Note phones. Um, and I just feel like the things that I liked about Android become less enticing to me, I guess, when it basically means that, the iPhone is kind of the hub of all of my work, right?
Mhm.
And just like when I've tried to change from Mac to PC to do all of my work, when I use an Android phone and my iPhone becomes secondary, then it's a huge disruption to, like, everything that I do. And when I have a huge disruption to everything that I do, I don't get things done.
Well, it makes things more
And
frustrating because you get your workflow, you have your process that you go through, and then it takes you
right,
out of that. And
right,
then in our line of work, especially for people who make content as often as we do, efficiency and routine and reliability and things just being there when you
yeah,
need them to, when you hit play or record, need to be there.
yeah, yeah, that's absolutely. I learned that the hard way, and I probably should have learned it quicker than I did, but I learned it the hard way in that whenever I would switch to PC, all of a sudden, like, my productivity would go way down because all of the systems, and I've been using Mac since, like, 1992, so I know the Mac system in and out. I've used Windows for a long time too, but I've never had to be like a one-man band. I'm going to make all of the content and release it and do all of the little things that go along with putting out a video. I'm gonna do all that several times a week for for, my job. and when I have to do it a different way, even if it's, like using DaVinci Resolve instead of Final Cut, there's
Makes a difference.
still, yeah, and so I'm almost on the verge of just not covering Android phones anymore because I don't get excited about them the way
Audible
that I
gasp.
used to. Yeah. Yeah, and they really do, like, looking at the content that I'm making, and then looking at the YouTube shows us, like, all the other channels that the people who are watching your videos are watching. Like,
Uh-huh.
8 out of 10 of those channels are Apple-focused channels,
I wonder,
and
it would be funny, when you look at those recommended channels, I wonder if our channels recommend each other. That would be something interesting to look at.
I mean, as we do the podcast more, I would assume that that would probably be the case, um,
Let me
but
look.
I still, like, I get hooked up with, Mr. Mobile, with Max Tech, with Front Page Tech, with Talos of Tech even, like, and we used, like, I haven't really, like, talked to Drew for a long time, but we still do stuff that I guess crosses over between audiences. And so it's just a lot of Apple focused channels. And of course, like MKBHD and channels like that. But
Yeah.
as I look at it, I'm just like, man, do I even need to do this anymore? Because I went back and I looked at numbers from 3 years ago compared to now.
Mhm.
And I used to get a lot of views on Android phone videos, but I
Mhm.
also had LG that was like one of the backbones of the channel. But the
Mhm. Yeah,
LG
and then they
phones,
went away.
they'd be good for a bunch of views over the course of the year whenever they would put out a new phone or anything like that. But without that there and only covering, like, say 2 or 3 Android phones a year, I
Mhm.
don't know. I don't know. It's like it's a very difficult thing to know, but I know that the more I've gotten into making my content and trying to really grow, the more disruptive switching to an Android phone becomes.
That's
And
understandable,
yeah,
and I hate to hurt your feelings, but I just looked at the channels that my audience watches, and you're not on there.
doesn't surprise me.
But what's funny is, the first one that popped up is Unbox Therapy. I don't know, maybe it's the beard. Who knows? But
Man, yeah, that
hey,
guy.
Michael Fisher's on there.
Yeah,
Oh, Flossie
that's
Carter, Tech
yeah.
Chat, The Verge. Who's watching The Verge? If you're watching The Verge, stop watching my channel. No, I don't care.
I I think that The Verge makes good videos.
They
I
do.
don't
I don't like their
necessarily
articles.
I don't like them as a publication, but they do make good videos.
They do. They
So,
make some pretty good videos. Well, the Pixel 8 for me as somebody who's a primary Android phone, I was really surprised by quite a few things whenever it came to the 8 Pro. I think they made the setup process easier when I transferred everything over. I was actually
yep,
even able to transfer my physical SIM. It converted it to an eSIM from my Pixel 7 Pro had or Pixel Fold had a physical SIM. And
right,
in the setup process now allows you to convert that to an eSIM. So I now have an eSIM in my 8 Pro. So I
right.
didn't have to go to the carrier. That was nice. The setup process was easy. The biometrics, they're as good as they've ever been. I know people still have complaints like low light, it's not the best for the facial recognition,
Yeah,
but you can use it with banking apps now, which is like kind of a first with a non-true biometric.
right.
The screen now the brightest in Android. It's just been a really nice, very smooth experience that I've had. So I've been very, very happy with a lot of the little subtle changes that they made to it. And I've been a person for the longest time who was like, okay, I like the curved edge displays. I was anti flat displays in flagship phones. And now this one is flat. And I don't know, just I've been really happy pretty much across the board with it. And I'm surprised I haven't been kicked off Team Pixel because I say a lot of negative things. But I think in a constructive manner. I'm
Yeah,
not like, oh, this phone is trash, but I'm like, come on, like Google, you can do better
yeah, yeah.
about
I
certain things.
I sort of took the nuclear option,
Yeah, you
and
punch the button.
yeah, unfortunately, like I look back on it now, and it's kind of like, well, I know why I did that, um, but but it probably wasn't necessary to do. Um, yeah, yeah. In my younger days, I often went over the top for effect, and and it did have an effect. I can say that. But
Yeah, it had effect.
yeah, yeah, um,
But I get what you're saying because even me as a non-iPhone person now, I've kind of been lulled into this complacency with using the iPhone and this 15 Pro Max. My most favorite iPhone prior to this was the 8 Plus. Like I really love the 8 Plus,
right.
and I thought it was a great phone. And then after that, I started using the SEs because I appreciated Touch ID. I like the smaller one-handed form factor. So there was a lot I liked about it, but I just never got into like the 11 Pro, 12 Pro, 13 Pro. The 13 Pro was good, like, and it had really good battery life. But this one, I don't know. There's something about it I just really like, and that's surprising to me because I'm really not much of an iPhone fan. But now that I've been using it for basically like 2.5 weeks,
Yeah.
um, I'm like, I keep picking it up, and
Yeah, for me, like, okay, so it is 2:57 Central Time right now, and I've been working today, so I haven't been picking up, I haven't been picking it up and fooling around with it a ton, but I'm at 74% battery for I've been up since 7. So
well, I
that's
didn't.
to me, if you can be at 74% battery in the middle of the afternoon, like, it's almost like if you work a 9 to 5 job, you're on the home stretch,
Yeah,
and
that's good.
you get home with, a lot more than 50%. And that used to be the benchmark for me is like, well, can I get home with 50% battery?
Until we
And
started working from home.
yeah, I know. And now it's just like it's harder to judge because I don't have to pick it up as much, but I did go out for like a 45-minute walk this morning and I was listening to podcasts and stuff and I was using Bluetooth when I was doing that. So there are some things that are somewhat taxing that I've done with the phone, and I think I'm going to actually make a video about this. Like, I had my iPhone 12 Pro Max, and for a long time I just didn't use the case anymore because I didn't like the bulk that cases put on it, and I had an Apple leather case, but it started to fray along the edge, and whenever that happens, I'm just like,
Bye.
I don't wanna see it.
Yeah.
So, but I got a case for this, and so when I traveled to Vid Summit a couple of weeks ago, I wanted to get a case because, you're traveling, the likelihood of dropping the phone and is greater.
Yeah.
So I got an OtterBox, Defender XT, which is, granted, not as big as the regular Defender, but still a pretty big case, and I hated it. I hated the way
Those are
that
terrible.
I just hated the way, like, the phone felt wide in the way that the older, like, the 12 and the 13 and the 14 felt.
Yeah, very
So,
much so.
I can't put a case on this phone.
And I like you. I really enjoy the form factor on the 15 Pro Max, and I echo that sentiment. Even just putting the Apple silicone case on it, it takes away all the cool news, like the newness. It feels like the same old blocky phone if you put a
Right,
case on it.
right. Yeah. So, to sort of round out the idea about the Pixel 8 Pro, why I might take it back, why some other people might really enjoy it. I think if the iPhone wasn't in my life, then I would look at the Pixel 8 Pro and be really excited about a phone that makes the kinds of effort that Google is making to really improve your quality of life using the phone, right? And, it would probably be for me, like, between the S23 Ultra and the Pixel phone, and I think that the Pixel phone is more it's more of a user-friendly phone than Samsung's phones.
Well, you don't have all the One UI overlay. That's one
Yeah,
thing people have always kind of flock to with the Pixel phones is the stock Android experience. And what I like about the stock Android experience is it doesn't feel like a developer phone anymore.
Right.
It used to feel everything was just like some Google engineer who just didn't care about aesthetics at all. Like, we're just going to make everything as plain as possible.
Right.
And once they came around with like the Material U concept, they came out with Android 12, they did the UI updates and stuff. It feels a little more spruced up, but it doesn't have those layers or
Right.
the extra apps that you kind of get with Samsung. And I think the biggest litmus test for me with this phone is, does this phone feel as seamless as using, like, say, an S23 Ultra? Because that's a standard bearer for Android.
Right.
Regardless of whether Google makes a phone, everybody looks to Samsung as being always the best in the Android world. And I can say pretty confidently that my experience with the 8 Pro and the S23 Ultra on a day-to-day value really feel kind of about the same. There's no hiccups, there's no lag, the cameras are. I mean, I think that you can get just as good of experience with either one, depending on what you want.
Right. Right. No, and like I say, if Apple wasn't a thing,
Yeah, if Apple was rotten and it disappeared.
yeah, um, I would pick up the 8 Pro and be really excited about learning everything about it and getting into everything about it. Um, but for some reason, in this moment, maybe it's because it was so hot on the heels of the iPhone. Maybe it was, yeah, I'd used the Pixel Fold recently. I really like that. I really like the Pixel Fold as well. Battery life, not so good. Uh,
Yeah,
and really, it comes down to stuff like that for me anymore, though. It's like, is the battery life good enough that I don't have to worry about it? Like, I'm getting to be an old man, right? I don't want to have to worry about battery life.
no, that's definitely not something you want to worry about. And that's something that I really harped on with the Pixel Fold. And that's something I made a tweet about this 2 days ago. And I said, I wish the Pixel Fold had the Tensor G3 in it, which is
Right,
something that I said all along from the beginning, because I was not otherworldly impressed with the Tensor G2 in a lot of ways. And battery life, I'm probably one of the foremost experts on complaining about battery life on
right.
YouTube. So, had the Pixel Fold had the Tensor G3, I think it would be a much better experience. But that also takes me back to another thing. Like, I really enjoy using the Pixel Fold. And since the iPhone 15 Pro Max has come out and since the Pixel 8 Pro, I'm not using a foldable right now. And it's kind
Yeah,
of irking me.
yeah. But there might be some news on that front
There
com-
might be.
coming up
I
soon.
I'm open to talk about
Yes, we will talk about it as soon as we're allowed to.
it. Yes.
But right now we're not. So let's just leave it at that. Although, did you see Michael Fisher had a video out yesterday about touring the OnePlus factory where they're making the OnePlus
I
Open?
thought that was really cool. I
Yeah.
I, I really like that. I One of the things that I appreciate about Michael Fisher's videos, the Mr. Mobile, Captain Two Phones, is that he'll go the extra mile. He's done some of these types of things before, and I really like this because everybody knows he's basically like Captain Foldables now.
Mhm.
He's one of the foremost experts on YouTube about foldables, and he loves them. So to see somebody who like really cares
Yeah.
about them to be able to get that kind of one-on-one with OnePlus to show off all that stuff is really cool.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. And I'm anxious to see that phone come out and to hear people's discussions about it, especially in comparison to the other foldables that are out there and around. Um, but that's all I can say about it at this
Yeah,
point.
that conversation is
um,
closed.
yes. Well, the one thing, the current news of the day has been that Apple released a new Apple Pencil
Yeah, the
with
$79
USB-C.
Apple Pencil.
Yeah, with USB-C. Um, it doesn't charge in a stupid way.
No,
That's
and
good.
there's no pressure sensitivity either.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
So
you get the budget Apple Pencil,
it's
and
funny to me that we're saying budget, and it's like this
it's
little
$80. Yeah.
style. Yeah, $80. And Apple is always stretching the usage of the word budget. Like, they don't say budget anything, but
No, but
we associate the cheaper version. We just call it budget,
right.
and there's nothing budget about it really. But it's it's interesting. Like, I see the purpose because over the last couple of
Yeah.
years, a lot of stuff has really transferred over to tablets, and a lot of people don't need pressure sensitivity to just draw and sign things on the screen. Like, it's not that
Right.
big of a deal, but it feels kind of arbitrary to take something like that out just to sell it and then sell it for 79. If it was 49 bucks, people would be like, "Oh, Apple's made the most amazing pencil ever." But it's
But
$79.
see, Apple's chargers, they're like if you need a new brick for your MacBook, the cheapest one of those is I think $49. So,
Yeah.
you know, that's like there's like a threshold for Apple. And I do believe that there's probably enough technology in there to warrant the price. Like if you think about it this way, if you don't have an Apple Pencil, right? And you've been waiting for the Apple Pencil to get cheaper because you just can't afford the 125 bucks plus
129.
tax.
Is it
129.
125 or 129? Yeah, 130
I
bucks basically.
Yeah, if you can't afford that, and I wouldn't blame you if you couldn't. I've had to do it twice because I put one Apple Pencil 2 through the washing machine, and
So what you're saying is
that did
it's not IP68.
it.
So
No, it's not water resistant in any way.
it's not resistant to Tide.
No, no. So if you don't have one of so this is the thing, and Sam from the Genius Bar podcast and Apple Track, uh, some sometimes Sam has silly things that he puts on Twitter. So, but today he was like, "Why are there three Apple pencils?" And I thought about it for a second, and I was like, "Well, because one of them works with some iPads, and the other
Yeah.
one works with the other iPads, and
Yeah, and
now
now this one works with most
this one has
iPads, but
USB-C."
yeah. It's funny, it's like
So
one of those math problems, like, all are one of those logic riddles where, like,
yeah,
all of the A's are not the B's, but some of the B's are the C's, and all the C's are the B's. It's
right, yeah,
yeah, it's like this weird flow chart.
yeah, and I've had I've had my iPad Pro, so I've had 2 or 3 iPad Pro 12.9-inch, and the one that I have right now is the M1 version. So 2 like, the version
2021.
before the most
We have
current
this
one. Yeah,
you don't have the same model iPad then.
yeah, and, the thing that's well, I try and use the Apple Pencil as much as I think to use it, which is to say I don't use it very much.
That's pretty
I
much the
would
same
be
boat I'm in.
bummed out Yeah, I would be bummed out if it didn't exist,
Yeah.
but I'm not an artist, visual artist, so I don't use it to draw, and I use it sometimes to write, but the iPad is not my, like, main device, so it's not the first thing that I pick up, so I end up, on one of these computers typing, right? Um, I did use it to, like when we were moving into this house, I drew, like, a mock-up of this basement where my studio is,
Uh-huh.
and kind of, like, tried to place things and start to plan, like, what I was gonna do. So there are a lot of good uses for it, but I have a feeling that there's gonna come a time when having something like an Apple Pencil will be more useful. Like you said,
I'm sure some
things are getting
people I'm sure some people have usages for them, but I
yeah,
when you talk about the Pro series iPads, I feel like a lot of people buy them because they're just bigger,
yeah,
and they're
and the
more
design,
cool.
like, some people
Yeah,
might prefer the
there's
design.
cool stuff about them, but by and large, I don't think a lot of people that actually use the Apple Pencil are using it for its intended purpose of, like, using like, graphics design, visual artist stuff like you're talking about,
Yeah,
and that's fine. I'm sure some people do. It's good that the capability exists. I don't really use mine because foldables came along about the same time and got that's the same year where 2 months later or a month later the Z Fold 3 came out with the S Pen,
right.
and
Yeah,
ever since we got the Z Fold with the S Pen, I don't use tablets anymore. It
yeah,
replaced my tablet usage. So I would love Apple, if you're watching this and not you've made it this far and like don't hate me
yeah,
that much. If you
which
want to
is
make a foldable phone that has an Apple Pencil, I would be ecstatic because I would love to test something like that out. But yeah, now that I have the Z Fold, see, I got the iPad Pro, and I'm like, wow, this is cool. I took my kids to Las Vegas. We went out there for a couple of days. We took a train ride back. I was watching movies. My kids were playing with it. It was great. And then a few weeks later, I get the Z Fold. I'm like, what's a tablet?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the weird thing for me is that I really like the 12.9 iPad, but I never use it as a tablet, really. I use it as, like, so right now, it's set up in, like, one of our upstairs rooms at a desk, and it's on a MagSafe dock that looks like an iMac, like a tiny version of an iMac, the
Mhm.
previous iMacs, I guess, but I use it that way with a keyboard and a mouse. But I did last week have to edit a video, or I didn't have to, but I wanted to edit a video in Final Cut Pro for the iPad because
How does that work?
I had filmed everything on my iPhone, right? And it worked pretty well. I mean, I would have to spend more time actually using that version of Final Cut Pro and, kind of figuring out the ins and outs of it. Because even though it's called Final Cut, it's still, I mean, it's not Final Cut when it comes down to, like, digging in and actually using it. But I did use the Apple Pencil almost exclusively for cutting and, like, dragging things, in and out. So that was a really useful way to integrate with the Apple Pencil because, it's like my big fat finger wouldn't be nearly as effective.
Yeah, it's not as
So,
precise.
yeah.
And I get that.
Yeah,
And if I were to edit, and it's funny because remember, I bought the M1 Pro because there were like John Prosser and everyone's like, oh, we're getting full scale apps. This means we're finally going to get Final Cut Pro, blah, blah, blah. And then we got the iPad Pro and it's like, where's all this stuff? And then it finally showed up
right.
2 years later.
Yeah,
So I the thing with me and iPads, they're very indispensable. I mean, whether it's a Pro or whatever, I would like an iPad Mini Pro. That would make me very happy. But
and
I
there were rumors that we were gonna get iPads today, well, this week. Most people thought today, but instead we just got an Apple
a
Pencil.
we got a budget Apple Pencil.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, it's just one of those things. Like it, I don't really use them that much. I do I do think a stylus is important because there are some things that you need it for. One thing
right,
that irks me about it though, I much prefer the S Pen the way that because it has full integration. You can swipe up and go to home. You can like do everything. And when it comes to the Apple Pencil, one thing that drives me crazy is you can't swipe up to go back
right.
to the home
Yeah.
screen, which really irks me. But somebody was like, "Well, it's because if you're doing graphics design stuff,
You know what?
you don't want
Yeah,
to you don't want to leave your project and take you back to the home page," which I get. I mean, I'm sure they could probably turn that feature on and off, but
yeah.
that's what there's just some
Samsung has the Good Lock app
Mhm.
that, can you can sorta draw out with that the different, like, the areas that you don't wanna be active in a, and I think you can do it on a per app basis, if I recall
Maybe.
correctly.
I haven't messed with it too much, but I mean, there's just some simple things. Like even when
Yeah,
you have a full size keyboard up, you can't just do like swipe typing. You have to pull up the pop up keyboard to use it.
yeah,
So there's just a few things that really take away from the experience for me that seem like they should be no brainers, but Apple has to do them differently for some reason. So, uh, but for things like signing, writing, drawing, I mean, I tried when I was in law school, when the first iPad 12.9 came out, I thought this will be great. I won't have to keep using tablets. I'll try like papers, right? Like notebooks.
right,
And I tried for one semester handwriting my notes because I like to handwrite. Because when I handwrite, it gives like that brain association with me where it's easier for me to remember
right.
things and to remember where they're at. So I tried that and it worked pretty well, but there were still times where just writing on paper was better. So I gave up after one semester, but it's probably better now. But at the time, I was really, really excited about it.
Yeah. I'm always impressed when I see, either a feature of the of the iPad, different pen features, and people are taking, like, they show these notepads and they're all, like, intricately drawn and all this other stuff, and I look at my notepad and on the iPad, and it's like, just I can't write legibly to begin with, but trying to write on the iPad is even less legible. So it just
Well,
looks like chicken scratch all over the place.
I have a
And
problem. I think it's called like dysgraphia, where like I'll start writing, and then as I write, my writing gets progressively one interchanged with cursive and print, and also like is not legible. I'll
yeah,
start off writing, and then it's like I'll start off writing in print because I don't like to write in cursive, and then it's like half cursive, half print. It just like it just goes
yeah,
downhill really fast.
yeah. I think that what happens for me is like as I so I used to do this thing called morning pages every day, and it was you were supposed to like wake up, go to your notebook, write morning pages. So it was like I always just used those composition notebooks, the ones
Hmm.
with the marbled cover. But I thought when the iPad and the Apple Pencil came out, I thought this is great. I won't have to buy the notebooks anymore, and I'll just be able to use the iPad. But I found it like somehow it didn't translate writing on
Yeah,
the
there's something.
iPad.
It's same. I think it's something similar to even reading for me. I used to really enjoy reading books, and now it's been replaced with like legal journals and news articles, and like I read all the time. I'm always absorbing
Yeah,
information, but I don't really read for like pleasure anymore, like a story. And but once everything kind of started making a jump from hardback to digital, I just can't get into these e-readers. I can't get into ebooks. Like I need a tangible book.
yeah, I understand that, but and I was a purist for a long time, but then I sort of gave in because my tech proclivities, and I read all the time. I mean, I have an MFA in fiction, so it's like something that is a big part of my life. And so I read all the time, and but also as a tech enthusiast, the Kindle was like super exciting to me. Just
I
like the
never
switch
got a
from
Kindle.
so my first review on YouTube was of the Kindle 2, I think it was. I did like an unboxing. It's terrible, like using a webcam as an overhead cam, and it was awful. But I was that excited about it, and so right now I have a Kindle Oasis that I use, and I think the thing that kept me using the Kindles is that I like to read when I get in bed, but I don't want to have to. And I have all the lights in my bedroom are hue lights, and they're all set to turn off at midnight. So I want to be able to keep reading. And once they
Yeah,
were
it's kind
like,
of hard to read paper with no light.
yeah, once the backlight Kindles came out, I was like, all Kindle.
I didn't
And
care about reading any ebooks until I got my Microsoft Surface Duo because then it felt like a real book and you could turn the
right,
page, like you could see the previous page and the other page. Because sometimes when I'm reading, sometimes my eyes get ahead of the words and don't catch up with what I'm actually trying to like the image I'm creating in my brain. So I have to go back
right,
and read a few sentences. So whenever it came to having one screen, I like to have both of them. I need to see both pages at the same time.
yeah, yeah. I'm strangely a super slow reader, and I always wondered like, why am I so slow? And then I realized that like I actually read like every word. and, and like I like because a lot of people I think the way they read is they just kind of they skim and they get the gist of the sentences and stuff. And I always read like every word because my wife reads like 3 times faster than I do.
As a legal scholar, as a doctor of jurisprudence holder, whenever I read like case studies and summaries and things like that, a lot of times you're reading quickly, looking for things that you need, and
Right.
then you dive in at that point. It's not like the whole thing is like, look, I don't need to know this. I'm trying to find this. Okay, I found what I need. So I do a lot of that whenever I read. It's like, okay, my brain just doesn't pay attention to a lot of the filler
Yeah.
and it just
Yeah.
looks for the key stuff. And I have to slow myself down when I'm reading real books or like reading real literature because all that stuff really matters a lot more because it's
Yeah.
telling
It's
a
funny when
story.
I was a copy editor and a proofreader back in the day, I read a lot faster. and mostly because once I had been doing that particular job for a while, I knew what mistakes I was looking for.
Mhm.
Because in every job, every kind of publication, or every kind of whatever it is that you're working on, you'll see the same kinds of mistakes. So I would just I would be able to skim and find the mistakes and not really have to read every word. But yeah, when I'm reading a book, it's so I like the Kindles, although I think the Kindle is stagnant, and they came out with the Kindle, the one with the note, the that you could actually write on, and that's
Uh-huh.
only half baked. So yeah, you can't actually write in the books. I wanted to be able to write in the margins of the books, and you can't do it. You could use little sticky pads, but then
Ah.
you can't see them until you call them up. So
Oh,
yeah,
that's kinda dumb.
the Kindle Scribe, that's what it's called. But I think that's where we'll call it a day. I call it a week, I guess. We'll be back next week. And
Yes.
next week there'll be more stuff to talk about. Some of that stuff that we said we had to talk about that we can't talk about, we'll talk about that stuff. And I'm sure there'll be something else to talk about as well.
There's always something.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is, we're in this has been a kind of slow techtober
Well,
so far.
we've made it through all the kind of exciting stuff. Like, we made it through the folds, we made it through the iPhones, we made it through the flip phones, we made it through the Google phones, and now it's like, what's next? until
Yeah.
until the end of January, we can start talking about the S24.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true.
So, yeah, unless you're really gonna have to, like, see our faces next week. No,
Yeah.
we actually have some really exciting stuff to talk about next week. We just can't
Yeah.
talk about it right now, but I'm open to talking about it next week.
Yes, of course. We've got those legal requirements that anyway, it'll be fun. So oh my goodness. Let's go ahead and end it. I'm tired, you're tired, everybody's tired. It's that time of year. It's suddenly winter. Well, not suddenly, but it's almost winter.
Yeah, the weather's
And
been really nice here, but yeah.
yeah, well, when I was in Dallas, man, it was hot as shit.
Oh, yeah, well, you got here, like, the last week of the really bad weather, and now things are simmering down a little bit. It's only gonna be, like, in the 80s this week here, so that's really I gotta break out my coat and my parka.
It was 36 degrees here this morning.
It was, like,
So,
49 here, which was unreal, but either way,
yeah.
yeah,
So once again, thank you everybody for coming and checking out the Painfully Honest Tech podcast. Come back again next week. Like we said, it's going to be fun. We just can't tell you why. And and Adam, thank you once again for the co-hosting duties. Do come back again and
I'm sure I
do
will at
it.
some point.
Yes, yes. And just what else was it? Like and subscribe if you're watching this and you're still watching this. um, Take the moment to like and subscribe because this is what we do. And yeah, we've got merch down below. We've got all kinds of different stuff. Check out Adam's channel, Tech Odyssey. And if you can't spell Odyssey,
I don't
uh,
blame you.
you look it up. And of course, I'll be back with more videos later on this week, as well as some shorts and some other fun things. So, once again, this has been Painfully Honest Tech Podcast, the Painfully Honest Tech Podcast, the podcast so honest it hurts. Until the next time, we are out.